Hi, everyone. Welcome to the DICES webinar on RPA and scaling for the future, which we are co-hosting with UIPath. We're joined by Jim Walker, the Global Director of Public Sector Marketing at UIPath, and one of their clients, Christine Jex, who has been the CISO for the NASA Shared Service Center for the past 18 years, and is now headed to DC to launch a very exciting program around automation and RPA at the Pentagon. And finally, we have our own Dave Sofrinko, DICES's Global Services Director of App Development and Testing, to set the stage for us and get us rolling. So we'll have a Q&A session at the end, and if you have a question, there should be a little icon to raise your hand, and we can answer questions that way. So Dave, please take us away.
Okay, thanks, Forrester. Next slide, please. So today we'll go over a quick agenda, really discussed around automation and what's the big deal. So quickly, I'll explain what robotic process automation entails and really what its uses are. Some of the direct and indirect benefits of robotic process automation. We'll talk a little bit about DICE's RPA framework, and then we will introduce UiPath as our platform and partner as we continue to expand our capabilities in this discipline. And of course, we are going to talk about our bot performance, which we call our Iser, which will help you guys as you build your own bots, ensure you're compliant with best practices and give you some complexity and other attributes of the bots once you've completed them. So next slide, please. So RPA, so what is RPA? So again, it is a technology. It's been around for a few years now, and really the whole intent is to mimic people's interactions with their applications. And again, it's very agnostic. It can work with most applications that are currently out there, including ERP, Microsoft, databases, etc. And essentially anything that a human can do in front of a computer that's done manually or in some aspects automated, the bots that you can build will mimic those applications or those key instructions, or as you enter things onto a keypad, the RPA can mimic that. So really, when you look at some of its sweet spots and some of its best uses, you can see dual data entry screens. So again, a lot of this is when people are getting documents, or they have to take a particular source and then turn around and type it into a new system. This is really where RPA comes into play, where all that stuff right now could be automated. So you can free up that particular person to move on to other strategic tasks. Secondly, straight through processing. So again, a lot of interactions or integrations where one system is dependent upon data from another system. And I say systems that also can be emails or Excel files, and in some cases, PDF files. Anything that could be done that has to go, again, from that straight through processing, RPA can pick up those source documents and turn around and input that respective data back into the next process to continue the end-to-end process flow. Virtual integration, response for request of data, again, very fine where people are going from a reporting standpoint. The bot can mimic those interactions, pull multiple data sources, then consolidate that data and present on a dashboard or however you want that data to be recalled and delivered. So again, all those things that used to be merging documents or pulling from multiple systems, RPA again can certainly mimic all those interactions and actions and return the completed product. And of course, rule-based decisioning making. So again, as we build your bots, you can see we will have the options strictly from a yes or no, doesn't meet this criteria, yes or no. The bot can be taught how to do that itself. So as you're processing documents, again, as you build into these business rules, and therefore, again, it can be a long-running process where, again, we focus on end-to-end processing. So again, anything, again, from a user perspective, anything that's currently done manually, what we do is we build these bots, and these bots can now take place of that human interaction And of course, the same outcome will be exactly the same since we aren't doing nothing more than what the current human is doing today. Next slide, please. So this next guy is really scripting versus macro. A lot of questions I get is, why am I going to go out and, purchase software or go ahead and record these bots when I can do them internally within your applications? Well, the main part of this, again, is just the ease of use for one. Secondly, the products can be used by business analysts and you do not necessarily need to be a developer. So in most cases, instead of opening up legacy code or code and going through the whole cycle of the SDLC, where you're capturing requirements, moving on to development, testing, deployment, production, all that stuff that goes along with it, scripting RPAs or these bots, can essentially do the same thing without being intrusive in any of your code. So again, RPA will run on its own server, and again, it just mimics its own human interaction again. So things that previously would take months, perhaps 6 months to a year to build as you're executing or coding or scripting, the RPA bot, by leveraging the UiPath tool, will certainly get these bots done in a matter of days or weeks versus months. And again, without opening up the code, your risk of breaking things into the production environment is certainly minimized. So from a RPA perspective, certainly very advantageous because, again, of the ease of use as well as no interaction with the existing code or legacy code. And of course, they are reusable components, which again, as you build your bot library, they're reusable across multiple applications versus having to code multiple integrations or multiple systems and other systems where RPA can do all that stuff. And again, focused on the business users and non-technical folks versus having to have developers do that type of work. Next slide, please. So some of the tangible benefits of RPA. One of the biggest, what I find the biggest is once you create the bots and they're executable, they're essentially run 24/7, 365. So again, you do not need to have people to do this. The bots are totally automated, where it can continually run and not having to monitor them for the same amount of time that obviously, again, a human would be doing the interaction for. Typically in the industry standards is we can increase productivity from 2 to 5 times of an FTE output. If you look at the standard 8-hour day, we're going to multiply it by 3 initially because the bots will run 24 hours a day. And again, providing that same level of quality into the overall process. Secondly, the accuracy. So again, as we code these bots and we go ahead and validate them and test them and put them into production, there's fewer human errors. And that really means because this is a coding language, so it's not like there's going to be something out of the ordinary or a particular person it's going to do typos or, the human error factor. Once the bots are created, they do not change unless you purposely change them. So there's increased accuracy is a key component of leveraging the RPA capabilities. And of course, the one that I've already discussed a little bit, it frees up those people to do higher value business objectives. So again, we don't have a person doing these manual tasks on a daily basis. The bot can now take place of this, and that particular person can move on to another task. Some of the indirect benefits, again, compliance and legal requirements are made easy. I spoke a little bit about the non-invasive, works on the front end instead of direct integration with the code. Decrease the need for ongoing training of employees. So again, once we build these, obviously that particular person or subsequent employees coming in do not have to do that task, that the bot will continue to execute as long as you would allow it to. Increase coverage without increasing overall FTE costs, automating the environment provisioning, and of course, standardization. So all these things present an excellent business case, as you can see, growing throughout the market as well as the trends to leverage the automation specifically around RPA, machine learning, and predictive analytics. And again, as we get further into the webinar, our folks from UiPath will certainly give you some excellent use cases on how it can increase your productivity. Next slide, please. So the DISIS RPA framework. So again, DISIS is one of the leaders in the RPA space. We have a dedicated automation center of excellence that is focused on RPA, artificial intelligence, as well as predictive analytics. We continually monitor the automation market and trends, again, working with our partners like UIPath. We also develop and publish automation standards. We've done that now for quite a few clients. And again, evaluating and managing operation tools and vendor tools. Manage portability and reuse. So again, a large benefit of leveraging robots is that once you build one, you can put it into a repository. Again, very reusable assets as you move along. And as you build your inventory of assets, you can continually leverage the automation in, again, back to most of the business cases that, fit the criteria for a robot. We also provide tool training certifications, and we manage automation research laboratory. So everything that we do here from a governance perspective, assists DISIS and our clients to capitalize and leverage automation, which again increases your output, your productivity, which obviously results in additional revenue. On the assessment side, we do a lot of this. In fact, outside of a specific RPA engagement, any engagement that DISIS now does with clients, whether it's focused on RPA or not, we do an assessment, and of course this is cost-free, but we'll come in and identify those automation opportunities. We'll do the evaluate and prioritize the automation initiatives based upon some criterion we have established over the last few years, and then we can actually build a business case to justify the automation projects. So all this comes free of charge, or again, some clients know they need to do RPA but don't know how or where to start. DISIS in our Automation Center of Excellence will come in and do that assessment for you and then give you a roadmap and include everything from a governance standpoint as well. Of course, after we do all that stuff, depending upon the client and their skills and capabilities, we do offer to configure and develop the bots themselves. We'll define the project scope. We'll work with the workflows. We'll build and teach the automation folks, because again, these are not necessarily developers. We're working with engagements now where we're teaching the actual business analysts and the business units themselves on how to build and these automation robots. Then we will obviously test them, deploy them, and then again, build that catalog for the automation attributes. So as they continue to get their discipline up and mature, they can certainly be on their own to continue to leverage the automation capabilities. From a management perspective, of course, you will have to monitor these bots, even though they are essentially error-free. They continue to run. We do monitor those robots to make sure they're performing, or we can optimize them, et cetera, to get additional performance out of the bots themselves. We will create the APIs, or you can use ours. We'll create yours based upon your business to report on the automations. As well, we provide our Automation Center of Excellence, does a support and remediation. We manage a help desk that's available 24/7. And then again, back to the continuously improving the automations capabilities and the bots as we continue to leverage those in the marketplace. The last piece here from our framework is the support. So again, we can provision the automation technology infrastructure depending upon your tool selection. We will build a high-level architecture to support those bots as well as the automation themselves. From a security standpoint, same thing. We do get a lot of questions on the security of the bots. So keep in mind, it's doing nothing more than mimicking the human. So it is not put into your production environment. It is not code. It's strictly a standalone capability that allows us to leverage the existing humans' privileges. So that way there is no security concerns as you move forward with these robots. Again, working with our financial companies, healthcare companies, It can help doing financing, budget, manage the human change, perform workload management. All these things are capable within our framework that we work with our clients to ensure, again, people are getting the most ROI of leveraging the RPA. And of course, managing automation and legal compliance. Anything that has a particular workflow, again, that requires that human interaction, again, that's key for RPA. If you're doing it today, the bot can do it for you in the future. Next slide, please.
Sure. Hey, for a second, we're going to do some quick polling now that you've had your overview. And we want to see where some of you guys are in your automation journey. You guys might be just starting. You may not have made any things, but you should see a couple of questions pop up on your screen right now. It'll take 30 seconds to click your answers. And then we'll move on to hearing from Jim Walker at UIPath, who's going to tell us kind of about the platform aspect of automation. Awesome. We'll give it a couple more seconds. There's actually a timer on here, guys. Thank you. All right. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. So next, we're going to move into Jim Walker from UIPath, who's going to talk to us a little bit about choosing a platform and kind of capabilities of the platform and some successes they've had in the market. Jim, can you unmute yourself, or do you want me to unmute you?
I'm unmuted.
All right, fantastic.
Perfect. Next slide, please. Perfect. So I retired from the federal government last October. So I'm still one of those guys that looks around and says there's four kinds of people that you're going to talk to when you're talking about new products. You're going to talk to a vendor who's going to tell you that our product is the best product, it always has been, and you should always come to us first. You're going to talk to consultants who know they're there to help you, but you also can talk to clients and analysts. And in the client's case, you can talk to the leaders of that organization and you can talk to the users. So I'm really thrilled that we have Christine Jexel on today with us. Christine and I worked together when I was at the NASA Shared Services Center. She's still a government person, and as you heard, is actually moving up to take over her own RPA program for the Army. But UiPath came to her after I left. They were using another product before when I was first there, and as I left, they migrated over to UiPath. It's definitely a good product from our perspective. It's starting to meet people's needs of more than just RPA. 2 years ago, if you went into a room and said, who understands anything about RPA? The answer was nobody. Now, 60% of a room knows about RPA. 40% are saying, what about cognitive and what about AI? So one of the nice features of the UiPath platform is it's being configured and positioned to support all of that type activity. The OCR, the natural language reading, the AIs from Google, Microsoft, and Watson, IBM. So it's a very robust platform. As you can see, we have ATOs. It's the only RPA program right now that have authorizations to operate in any of the Department of Defense activities, and it also has it in some other activities. I'll show you those in a second. If you're familiar with the term CAC or PIV, that's the small wallet-sized card that fits in the computer with a chip on it. Ours is the only product out there right now working interactively with its cards. And Christine might mention the party they had when they got those, because in addition to being the first bots in the federal government back in June of last year, Christine was the CISO that got the first bots, their PIV cards. We're also US-based with our development center, which in the federal market, which is where I try to focus, state, local also. Having a US-based call center is very important to them when they're writing contracts, especially in the DoD environment. And so we have both a call center and a development center in Washington State now. Because we are built on the .NET framework, we wanted to put our new facility near Microsoft. We recently opened our new headquarters in New York. The company is a strong Romanian company when it first started, and it's just growing leaps and bounds. And so this year we opened and designated the headquarters in the New York City area. We're focused on the public sector, so much so that we also have a 10-person staff located in Tyson's Corner of Virginia that is really reaching out to federal environment and working with them to help them with their robotics. Next slide, please. And when I say help them with robotics, right now we're in about 11 to 13 agencies. If they've closed deals this week that they were supposed to, then we're in 13. But we are providing UiPath to, in addition to NASA, if any of you were at our April 24th conference in DC, where essentially UiPath had the post office, had GSA, had the Army, had all of their clients there. They didn't have to have any of our own people talking about the product because we just seem to have a lot in the federal space. I say with a lot of confidence that we are the leader in the federal space, that none of the other products have it. And I think it's because of the tight security that we have, fully qualified under NIST 800, which really helped us to get started and get those first couple ATOs. We haven't had any clients call us and have problems with their security and therefore had to stop their bots actions. And as you can imagine, with all of the concern with cyber warfare and cyber break-ins, the government in general is just real skittish about the cyber security. So we've really met the mail when it comes to that. Now, I did tell you before, I would expect you to hear me say our product is the best, please buy it. And I expect you to hear consultants say we're here to help you. But I'd like for you to spend 5 or 6 minutes with Christine. She is literally on the road between NASA's Southern Mississippi location and the DC area today. And so, Christine, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the experience that you've seen over the last year since I've been gone.
Because I'm not looking at the screen, and just want to let you know that this chart depicts our journey for RPA and kind of our strategy, first out the gate when we started doing robotics. So this robotics allows the NASA Shared Services Center to improve the delivery of services such as financial management, human resources, information technology for our help desk, procurement, and along those lines to all NASA centers. So you'll see kind of just where we are today, kind of how we got there and where we are. But more importantly, let's talk about what our proof of concept with our bots kind of took place. So we started out with George Washington. That was our very first bot that we put into production, and it had 4 processes that we were able to code on that bot, so, which is pretty significant. And that led us into allowing us to start setting up that bot management office. And, of course, things have changed. That office changed names. Our bots changed names. Governance kind of took it on a word of its own, as you can imagine, working for the federal space. And kind of what our vision was and how we were going to expand it and actually be the service provider for other NASA centers to use the capability in other areas. So with all that said, Jim kind of alluded that, we had some showstoppers. We, early on in our proof of concept, we proofed out a different product. It looked great on paper, but once we started loading it up on our servers and realizing that, it didn't meet the security requirements and access controls that in the federal space you have to worry about. So if I had my preference, I would probably just plaster security all over this, because you have to have access controls. And as Jim alluded to, we did finally get our bots badged, which we have in NASA. We're required in the federal government to actually, sign on with PIV cards, and we have to sign into applications with those PIV cards. So it was very critical for us to have this so we could integrate better with our systems. And that is the main reason why we switched to UiPath, because we were kind of trying out two vendors at one time, and UiPath lended itself to actually meeting those security requirements that are critical for federal space. We also had that application third-party pen tested with some of our gurus, and they were able to find some flaws. And what I enjoyed most is that UiPath quickly took that information and made it, positive. They did the remediation needed for us to meet that. So I'll stop there because I'm told I only have a little bit of time, but for the most part, that's where we are in today.
Good. Next slide, please.
Okay.
So I'd give you three big lessons that I've kept up with Pam Wolf, who was leading the robotics program there at the Shared Services Center, and she and I are meeting at a conference in a week, and we were talking last week, and we both agree. You'll hear a lot about robotics, regardless of who the vendor is. They're going to tell you that they're easy, and easy doesn't mean simple when it comes to coding. You're not going to and take the people who are at the front desk of your office today and have them start to develop their bots. But interesting, what I've seen over the last year is I've moved out from behind the NASA desk and out to see the 20-odd agencies that are doing robotics. They're not having to reach back to their most senior developers. And quite honestly, they're picking their very junior developers because the software and it seems to lend itself to kind of shadowing and closing off the things that they don't need. And UiPath's very good at that. For example, we have about 500 little modules in the code. So if you need to open an email, you don't have to write the code to open an email. You just pull that module out and tell it where to look at for the email. Very simple. And I mentioned earlier that you have the different people who are going to talk to you. Well, this is the voice on this Gartner report. It's not a report, it's actually a website that's kind of interactive. And you'll notice that we have a good, strong showing at our 4.3. The thing has changed. There've probably been 10 more people that took the survey over the last few days. But these surveyors are all people that are using the products. And we do take some pride in UiPath in the fact that survey after survey is showing where the users are finding ours easier to work with. Treasury has a great story where they were doing pilots, and much like Christine ran into, they looked at two products before they settled on UiPath with one team, and another team looked at one other product before they settled on UiPath. So easy development doesn't mean Mary in the front office or Bob in the front office are going to build your bots, but you will find that you don't need expert developers. And a lot of these younger millennials, if you will, love to get in there and tinker with this kind of stuff. And also remind you that fast and easy doesn't mean fast and easy if you pick your hardest process to start with. There's a lot of organizations that are stumbling out of the blocks because they want to have their biggest process automated tomorrow. And while UiPath and the other vendors, quite frankly, can deliver on that fast and easy, you have to break that process down into its parts. The value of breaking it down into the parts, unlike the old IT process of a big requirements document and taking 6 months to show it to you, is if you do it in an iterative manner, you should be releasing something that is usable and return on investment at the end of every month. It might just be that all it did in the first month is open the email that has been coming in and determine that the attachment was valid or not. And the next month, it may take that attachment and validate that the attachment itself is correct. And on the third month, it may be assigning it to the queue by going into a ServiceNow or a Remedy or any other ticketing system and creating a ticket for you and assign it to a person based on some pattern. But every month, you should be seeing something deliverable, and it's something that is taking work off of the hands of the staff and freeing them up. Because no employee is going to go home tonight saying to their kids, hey, I opened 500 emails today. They only opened 500 emails because they had to get the emails open to do their work. And then one last thing that seems to really be strong, we were trying to get the CIO that Christine worked for on today, and he was just out of town. There's a lot of hype out there about, oh, this is so easy, you don't need your CIO. Well, if you're doing any work in the federal space, probably in most state instances also, your CIO, you don't go anywhere without them. What you don't need, where the hype, if they did it right and said it right, is you need your CIO to build you your servers, to give you a good CISO who can test it and make sure it's secure, and can put it out on the network for you in a secure manner. After that, it can become a business tool like no other tool. It is going to afford them the opportunity to have their own developers at the business level, so they don't have to fight for priorities with all the other departments. And this business developer may be one of their current employees who takes, in the case of UiPath, the 100 hours or so of free training, gets a certificate and comes back and starts automating processes for them. And as Dave mentioned earlier about a COE, everybody can build a process, but I think what you want to have is a COE, a governance board, if you will, that validates that any bot that's going in production on your network environment is in a good shape. And next slide, please. So in addition to Gartner having a group of people who were willing as users to say something about the product and if they liked it or not, Horses for Sources has published or will be publishing this week their new survey on RPA. And they've made this one slide available that talks again about some 500 odd users who have taken their survey form and kind of ranked the ease of use, the ease to install. That was one of the first things we found when the first product we worked with took about 2 weeks to install. It was a good product. When Christine and the staff there installed the UiPath, it took them almost 12 hours. And so ease of installation is important. It makes it simpler for the CIO to buy into it. It's not something where he's got to pull people off the line to install this new product. And that's for the control rooms and the orchestrators and things like that. The bots, you can have those loaded on virtual machines in no time. So you will find that there's a great demand for robotics out in the federal sector if you do any work with them. Commercially, bots are all over the world right now, and there are companies that now have 500 to 800 bots. We're not seeing the massive layoff of people. What people are starting to realize at the management level is they now have a significant amount of new capacity that they can start doing human-to-human interactions, and that is making their customers a lot happier. So I'm sure there's some place where 2 people were laid off because of robotics, but the vast majority of all the clients that we're seeing and all of the ones I've seen in federal, just no one talks about the layoff of people because there's too much work to do or too much of a desire for new capacity. So with that, Dave, I'll turn it back over to you for that innovative Bottleizer of yours that I just learned about that I think is a great tool. And you're looking for your mute button.
All right, thanks, Jim. So the Bottleizer is a proprietary tool that DICE's Automation Center of Excellence has completed. And what we found, or why we thought this was a great idea, is as people go out and start to leverage the tools and the bots, and as Jim mentioned a little bit earlier, not taking their time and understanding the actual process flow and the security requirements and infrastructure requirements, et cetera, a lot of the ROI that people are expecting, they were not seeing. So what we've created here is called the Bottleizer. And again, it supports all of the bots that are created, whether we create them in-house or if the client creates them. And what it does is it goes out like a static code analysis tool that you see for other software initiatives. And it comes back and it'll give you a review according to best practices on how well your bot is created, as well as some optimizations, where it could be optimized, et cetera. So again, no code changes. It simply evaluates the tool that you've created. And again, it gives you an opportunity to look at what you've done and give you suggestions or tell you how well your code is conforming to industry best standards or coding standards, whether it's .NET, Java, etc. It'll evaluate possible error code, script failures, looks for those efficiencies, again, back to the optimization of performance. And then, of course, it standardizes the coding and helps establish best practices. So this is, again, it's one of a kind tool that we've developed and that we provide as a free service as we go and work with our clients, that we could do some analysis on their existing bots, or as we build bots internally, it gives us an opportunity to make sure we are compliant with our standards and coding standards and providing the best application or these bots to ensure that we're doing exactly what we're doing and give you something that's, again, conforms and it's reusable. Next slide, please. So again, statistics, the complexity analysis, the command portability, everything that's typical within a coding structure, coding standards that you may have. Again, the bot will tell you whether you are following the defined development standards, reducing the deviations and code standards, identifies those enhancements, and really what it does is optimize your bots to get better performance out of those. So again, the Botalizer, I'm sorry, one more slide, please. So again, what it does, again, for the development teams out there, it really helps you standardize your bots, again, following those best practices. The refactoring part, whether we need to refactor the bots, or identifies areas where you could refactor it again to enhance its capabilities. You can compare the versions of automation scripts to determine progress. So as you go through your cycle of building these bots over time, continually running the Botalizer will ensure that you are, again, not having to go back when you get to, sprint 1 or 2, but go back. It'll give you all those comparisons up front. And of course, compliance standards, especially when you get into that federal or any kind of compliance check with SOX, HIPAA, et cetera. At a high level, we can determine whether your code is in compliant with that in case there's ever any audit requirements against your particular business. So the Botalizer, again, continually being reviewed, updated as you get on your phone, new ways that are coming that they put out. The Botalizer in our Automation Center of Excellence is always creating additional enhancements, compliance checks. And again, it's a service we provide to make sure that your business units and your bots that you're building really meet your expectations, and you do get the ROI out of the bot after you build them, we build them, and again, using any tool. If we do have demonstrations of the bots, so if you're interested in seeing how the bot performs, just feel free to email Sydney, who is the host here, and we are more than happy to set up a demonstration for your interest to run through the Botalizer and all of its capabilities and sees how it performs. Next slide, please. So that's really the end of the presentation. Again, we are now opened up for questions for the last 15 minutes. Miss Sydney, you can monitor from here going forward?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to let Forrester, who's one of our automation executives, host the Q&A. But I appreciate you and Jim and Christine, when she can, sticking around for a couple minutes to field some questions if we have any.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Sydney. Hey, folks, just click that icon if you have a question, and we'll get you on the air.
All right, so Dave, we have one question that says, from a security standpoint, what should large organizations be considering when deploying their first bot? And Dave, if someone else on the phone is the right person to answer that, just let me know.
Well, two things. Let me start, and then I'll pass it over to James or Jim. So first thing, again, keep in mind, these bots are just really mimicking human interaction. So whatever processes or security requirements that are currently in place to manage that human, the same ones would be in place for the bot. Because again, the bot is not in production. It is not code that is in your production code application itself. So from that aspect here, if the security for a human is a certain attributes and parameters, then the bot would just go ahead and inherit those. So there is no additional security required from that perspective. But let me give James an opportunity. He's from this federal side. You know, may have some more specifics on the security point.
Yep. Just my real quick comment, and I'll let you have Christine, because that's her expertise. It's one thing to say that, but it's amazing how many people resist that. They literally, when we were working with a CFO office, said we have to test and have more security around a bot than we do our people. And I could make the argument all day long that our bots will never talk to each other. They will never collude with each other, anything like that. And yet the idea is there's something that we can't manage ourselves like we can a person. And so therefore we need more security. Just doesn't make any sense to me. But in a large organization or small, you know, at least if you're starting out with the premise of make them as secure as your people, you should be good. I'm just surprised at how many people are saying we want them more secure than our people. Christine, have you got anything on that? And how you guys have been dealing with it for the year?
Hey, yeah, so I think that from the most part, you're absolutely correct that people are just in fear. So, of course, you know, to kind of calm down some of that fear, you might want to really make sure that you're collecting some really good logs. But on the back end of it, you know, yes, it's like a human. However, the big thing is that you now have to look at it on the back end. So meaning that your developers, they might start requiring separation of duty from a development standpoint. In other words, you don't want to have any collusion with someone that's doing AP and also coding AR, if that makes any sense. So you now kind of have to be very careful because you have that, you know, you usually have it in your, up on the front end, but now you might have it on the back end. So just something to think about and to make sure you're monitoring and you have the right checks and balances and your workforce managers that for the bot is actually tuned into that.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to check and see if we have any additional questions. Dave, there's one on the Bottleizer, just in terms of deploying the Bottleizer. Is it platform specific, or are we able to use it in our automation environment in general? And if it is there plans to expand the platforms that the Bottleizer can run on?
No, the Bottleizer, again, is agnostic, so it can run on any platform.
Okay, and we'll wait a couple more seconds to see if any lingering questions pop up. If not, we will be able to give you some of your lunch hour back.
Hey, I'll make a quick comment on your Bottleizer. The reason why I was so interested when I heard about it the other day, I think you're going to find that anybody can develop bots. And there's not going to be a shortage. Once we kind of get over this tipping point of getting started, we're going to see 500 bots all over the place. But once you have 500, managing those bots is going to be a struggle. You know, Oracle has a change, which bots have to be fixed. So at least on the front end, to be able to securely say this bot meets all of the objectives that we know of that are being checked, and it can get it through that initial period so you know with confidence that the bot that's being deployed is not only a rigorous and sturdy bot, but it's going to be a secure bot, really makes your Bottleizer a product that's going to have some legs. You were talking earlier about the COE. A component of the COE is approving bots to go onto the network. And a component of the COE is how to deal with the changes to bots. You're going to certainly help alleviate some of the concerns on the front end of that so that they might be able to start focusing on the back end.
No, thanks for that, Jim.
Hey, Jim.
That's great.
Hey, Jim, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I totally agree. I want to mimic that, Jim. It sounds great because as we have noticed that the more we get into the complicated and the integration processes, I think a tool like this will totally invaluable. So, you know, that's my 2 cents.
Yep.
Thank you. And Dave, it looks like our last question is really around DICE's experience. UiPath talked a lot about working in the government space, but there's a last question about other industries where DICE is supporting and implementing automation. I know finance is one of them. Can you speak to some others?
Well, sure. So some of our biggest clients are in the telecom space, as well as the oil and gas space. So again, you know, as a shared service, you know, I am horizontal across the verticals. So as we identify opportunities, regardless of what industry, we still look for those and build bots for those particular customers. So it's not focused on any particular one. And I can tell you now, we are doing lots of bots work throughout the oil and gas industry, as well as the telecom industry. And of course, that continues to grow each and every day with customers that are looking for this type of capability.
Okay, thanks. Well, I will let Forrester wrap it up with thank yous. And like we said, we're going to get this up and out to you guys as a follow-up document. So anyone who maybe had to join late will be able to watch it and own it. And we will thankfully see you guys next time.
Very good. Thanks.
Everyone. And thanks for presenting. Big thanks to UiPath and Jim and Dave and Christine, and safe driving, Christine. And see you next time.